Hello, and thank you for tuning in to a Trip Hacks DC summer live stream. If you're new around here, welcome. My name is Rob. I'm a tour guide and the founder of Trip Hacks DC Tours. I am out here on the National Mall, and today's live stream will be a walk from one end of the National Mall all the way down to the other. So about 2 total miles. We'll see how far I can go. We'll see how long my battery lasts. If you are watching this on the replay, because you are coming to Washington, D.C., and you're curious to know what would it be like if I walked all the way down the National Mall, leave a comment and let me know when you're planning to come and if you're thinking of doing this. Or if you've been here before, leave a comment and let me know if this is something that you did on your trip. Otherwise, this is a live stream, so if you're tuned in live, go ahead and say good morning here in the chat, or afternoon. It's actually afternoon now here in Washington, D.C. And I will say hello and good morning or afternoon to you too. So Gary Sorensen, good to see you there, my friend. And I joined a little bit late, so not quite sure who else joined the chat before I got a chance to get started, but good morning, Gary, and go ahead and say hello in the chat. I know I started a little bit early. I finished my tour and got over here and decided to go ahead and start a little bit early this morning. So for those who are already here, I will go ahead and swing it around and start today's walk. Today is Sunday, August 28th, 2022. It is the end of August. It is still officially summer for the next few weeks. Summer does not officially end until the end of September, so it is still summer here. Today is the kind of day that on camera probably looks really nice. We've got blue sky, we've got white puffy clouds. Actually, on the ground here, it's hot, it's humid. We have had so far 3 days in a row where we hit 90 degrees, and possible again that we will hit 90 degrees for a 4th day in a row here today. So when I checked my phone immediately before starting, according to whatever source it was pulling, it is currently 85 degrees here in Washington, D.C. So it hasn't quite cracked 90 yet, but it's entirely possible we could hit a 4th day of 90 degrees here. And that would also mean it'll probably feel closer to 100. All right, Trish, good morning from San Jose, California. Coming on Tuesday for a long Labor Day weekend. That is a long weekend, Tuesday through the following Monday. That's what I would call a long weekend. And Richard was just here 2 weeks ago with Richard's 2 sons. Amazing place to visit. I can't disagree with that. There is a reason why the Trip Hacks DC tour that I do, the private tour, is over here. And Andy will be here on October 1st for a week. Excellent. Very good. And Karen from Glen Ridge, New Jersey. Good to see you again, Karen. And let's see, I'll probably mispronounce this. It looks like Kalia from Mexico City. Welcome. Thanks for tuning in. I love the international audience. Always love having an international audience. And Bat Dog gets in on Tuesday as well. A lot of people coming in for a long holiday weekend. So this is as far as I am going on the west end. So the title of this video is Walking the National Mall, walking the length of the National Mall. We will start here at the Lincoln Memorial, Washington Monument, and end at the Capitol. Jay Stewart. Good to see you, my friend. Jay Stewart just came on private tour with me recently. Always a thrill to show folks around who've been loyal followers of the live streams here. And speaking of, there's Eddie Saunders, another former private tour customer, tuned in from a super humid North Carolina. Super humid in DC today, Eddie as well. I'm not sure how many times I'm going to turn the camera around because there is sweat coming down my face already. So I might just focus it on the nice day that we have here today. And Kalia, sorry if I'm mispronouncing that, says the videos are the reason why I will visit on the last week of September. Well, I love to hear that. There's a lot of good stuff going on here, so videos or not, glad to hear you're coming. And Vicky thanks for the vlogs. Will be there next week. Excellent. Next week as in before or after Labor Day. I'm never really sure whether you're supposed to say this week or next week when describing upcoming days. And Kevin was in DC last week. Says, I totally understand why you don't care for the electric scooters. I don't really mind the electric scooters. I just never use them. They are really expensive for what they are. So a ride on an electric scooter, and it's tricky because every company is different and every company has promotions, and you can prepay your minutes and you can get a week-long or 1 hour pass. But generally speaking, a 30-minute ride on a scooter will run you around $10. And for me, I mean, if I think about the fact that if I use that every single day, that would add up really, really quick. However, for a visitor, when you're on vacation, and I'm kind of this way too, when you're on a trip, when you're on vacation, what is money? Money is no object. Let's splurge a little. Let's get the electric scooter, save ourselves from a few steps. So I personally do not use them. I don't think I've used an electric scooter since 2019, but I sort of get the appeal. Vicky says we'll be here from September 5th to the 8th, so I believe that is after Labor Day. And Dave Wheeler coming from September 14th to 21st. And Eddie Saunders, my man, with the reminder to press the like button. Help me out a little bit here. Now, I said earlier, with any luck, I will make it all the way down to the Capitol. You may have noticed I haven't done a live stream in a while. I haven't been doing too many of them this summer. And part of that is simply that tours were really busy this summer. So I really didn't know what to expect tour-wise when the season started, because if you listen to my podcast episode about this, 2021 was kind of a bust. Like, tourism kind of came back, but not really, not very well. It was still way down from 2019. And so I kind of was planning for the worst, another year of that. And the reality is that tourism kind of came back, but also a lot of tour companies folded. They are no longer around. And so there's just a lot less competition now, which is good for me, bad for you. Good for me because I'm able to pick up some of that slack. Bad for you because, generally speaking, wherever you go, more competition means more choices, better prices, and good prices is definitely not something that you are finding in travel anywhere this year. So, got to see how sweaty I was there for a second as I explained that. So, tours have been busy, so I haven't been doing a lot of live streams because of that, but also I have just been struggling immensely with getting the technology to work. And I give huge props to the live streamers who come out and do this every single day. They must have it down to a science at this point, because you need so many things to go right all at the same time. You need the live streaming app to work. You need the 5G signal to be strong. You need the microphone to work. You need YouTube to cooperate. And if any one of those things goes awry, then the whole thing kind of fails. So I'm warning you now, if we don't make it all the way down to the Capitol, if the technology fails me, then at least I tried. But I have tried. I've worked very, very hard and spent probably more money than I would like to admit to try to get this set up to the point where it will work. But there's just so many variables. All right, I'm missing some chats here. Let me go ahead and scroll back. So let's see, not sure how to pronounce this, but the comment is, my son and I will be there next week after Labor Day. Is there any cool weather in the forecast? We're from Louisiana, so used to the heat and humidity, but would be nice to have a little cooler weather. So way too far in advance to say. We can barely predict the weather a day in advance, let alone a week in advance. So way too far in advance to say. But I will say that I appreciate what you're saying here, which is we're used to the heat and humidity, but would prefer a little cooler weather, because people say this to me all the time. They say something to the effect of, you know, on the hottest, most humid, miserable day of the year, they say, oh, well, you're used to it, so it's fine. And like, well, yeah, I give tours all summer in the worst humidity, but doesn't mean I prefer it. I would much prefer to give the tour when it's nice and cool. And we were lucky we had some nice and cool days and weeks in August, which is kind of rare, a rare treat to have some nice days in August. But yeah, I can't make any promises weather-wise. You're just gonna have to wait and see. I can't remember if I actually made this or not, but I have an idea on my list of ideas, is to make a TikTok video about how you can't trust like if you look at a weather forecast and it's days into the future, you really can't trust anything that it's saying, especially when it comes to precipitation. Temperatures, they can usually get those a little more on the nose, but precipitation, it's a tricky one. All right, Kanisha, happy Sunday. Happy Sunday to you too. And Alan Wynn says good morning from also humid Pensacola, Florida. A lot of folks tuned in from humid parts of the world. If you're tuned in from a nice, cool part of the world, let me know. It is definitely hot and humid here today. Now, if you haven't seen it yet, last weekend I posted a midnight walk around the monuments, and one of the comments I got was from Evan. He said he once accidentally stepped into this pool right here while walking around at night, and I totally appreciate that, because when it's dark, this little path here is really dark. There's no street lamps or anything over here, so be super careful if you come over here at night that you actually stay on this little path and don't wind up with your foot in this little pool here, because that would be a bit of a bummer. But we've got a mostly sunny day. We've got some clouds in the sky, so you will see clouds coming and going. Hello? But that day that I came out here and recorded at midnight, also an extremely humid night. It was about 80 degrees at midnight with pretty high humidity. So just because it was super late does not mean that it was cool. That was in July that I filmed that. All right, let's see. Jay Stewart says, did I manage to find out how the Lincoln statue was put into place, as I mentioned on tour? Aren't you talking about the Jefferson statue, Jay? And yes, I did find the answer to this question. The National Park Service, just by complete luck, posted a construction photo of the Jefferson Memorial. And the statue of Thomas Jefferson fits just perfectly in between the columns. Like, it is just exactly the right width, probably with not even an inch to spare, to fit in between the columns. Now the context of this is that the Jefferson Memorial, the statue of Thomas Jefferson, the statue that is in there now, was not installed until 1947, several years after the temple opened, and that was because of wartime rations. So we didn't have bronze available for statues during the war. So they had a temporary statue that was replaced in 1947. And in that photo I saw they squeezed it through the columns and it just fit. It was just exactly the right width to fit between the columns. If you send me a message later, Jay, I will try to find that photo and reshare it. And Eddie says, good to hear the tours are busy. They'll be interesting to compare how things are crowd-wise to my trip in May of last year. That was May 2021. I have pictures for empty monuments. Yeah, I remember that tour, Eddie. I remember because it was one of my first tours of the year, actually. Looking back at 2021, I gave very, very few tours for the entire first half of the month. So things really didn't start to pick up until around June. Even in May, things were still extremely slow. So I recorded a podcast episode that goes into the nitty-gritty details of 2021, but the gist of it is that of the 12 months of the year, only 2 of them were better in 2021 than in 2019. Most were down. Overall, tour business was way down. So 2021 was kind of a bust, but 2022 is better so far, and I probably will record another podcast episode at the end of this year with another sort of roundup, because things are definitely very different right now. And it's so sunny out here I can barely see my screen, so apologies if I'm struggling with the comments today, but super sunny and the glare is making it really hard to read. So let's see. Joy is deep. Hello. And I can't read your name. Too much glare. It says, I'm a new viewer from the UK, but am visiting the first week in November. Excellent. First long haul flight too. Yeah, I have not been on a long haul flight since 2020. The last trip I took was an international trip. It was in January 2020. And Dave Wheeler coming in with the forecast from California, 56 and cloudy. And I would kind of take 56 and cloudy right now. It's so sunny I can barely read my screen, and it's so humid I'm sweating over here. And Evan Cortez, yes, that was you. I think about that every time I walk over on that path now. I think about you stepping in the water in the dark, because it is totally possible if you are not paying too much attention. And Jay Stewart, yes, no problem, Jay. You're British, so it's okay if you mix up the presidents, but the Jefferson Memorial was the one with the statue that was installed at a later time. And let's see, Sweet Time says, what national malls are currently closed as of today? Don't think I understand the question. And it looks like that's the end of the chat. So I think I'm caught up now. Welcome to everybody who has tuned in. I started a little bit early today because my tour ended on time and I was able to start early. But if you have just tuned in, welcome. My name is Rob, tour guide and founder of TripX DC Tours. And if you haven't said hello in the chat yet, go ahead and say hello. We have nearly 50 people watching right now, so I would love to know who you are and where in the world you're watching from. And is the weather as hot and humid as it is right now here in Washington, D.C.? I'm making my way all the way down the National Mall. The plan, I started at Lincoln. The plan is to end at the Capitol if technology cooperates. Been going for about 20 minutes so far, so still a long way to go. And let's see, Jay Stewart recommends booking a private tour. And he would know, he just came on a private tour with me. And yeah, heck of a trip you had there, Jay. Got to go to New York City, one of my favorite places to visit. Got to come to DC. Got to go to Disney World. Definitely an excellent trip to take all the way from over in the UK. And I've had quite a few more folks from the UK recently, so you guys are getting back out again. That's great. I had very, very few international guests in 2021. Almost everybody who came on tour in 2021 was an American, which is great. You know, most folks who visit Washington, D.C. are Americans, but it's always great to see folks from other countries coming and enjoying the sights. Now, it does take approximately 20 minutes to get from Lincoln to the Washington Monument. So in that video, my midnight virtual tour video, I did walk, and it took about 25 minutes. And that included going up the stairs, walking around inside the Lincoln Memorial. So if you're trying to get some context for doing it yourself, if you're thinking, I want to do this, I want to walk this part of the park, that'll give you about a sense of how long it takes. Not sure how well it's coming across on the stream, but at least to my eye, it looks really nice out here today. It looks really nice, but it feels really humid. All right, gonna take the left here. Continue heading down the mall. And let's see. Any idea when the train will be running to and from Dulles Airport? If I knew the answer to that and I could bet on it, I would be a millionaire. And Sweet Time's question was, what museums are closed on the mall as of today? Just the Air and Space Museum. Museums are pretty much back to full capacity now. Full hours, full capacity. You need tickets for 2 museums. So the African American History Museum right here, you need a ticket to. You need a ticket for the National Zoo. You need a ticket for One with Eternity at the Hirshhorn Museum. And when the Air and Space Museum reopens in October, you will need a ticket for that as well. But I just, in my most recent tourism update video, I had some information about the reopening of the Air and Space Museum. So check that out for the details. Now, we have to be honest with our expectations here. The Air and Space Museum is still under renovation for several more years. So when I say it will be reopening, the entire thing will not be reopened. It will be certain parts of the museum, certain exhibits. So just make sure you have your expectations in check when you go, and you will need a ticket as they are expecting high demand. And hey, Peter Hedberg. Peter says, I'm planning on a UK tour in early October, and seeing this brings back some good memories from Washington. Oh, thanks, Peter. Peter, another one of my former tour guests. And always good to have you tuned in here. Love having so many former tour guests tuned in right now. It's awesome. And Alistair from Tyson's, where it is just as hot and humid. Only a few miles away, so no surprise there. And Gary Sorensen, also another former tour guest, seconding Jay's statement. And thank you, Eddie, for including the link. So almost everything is reopened. Smithsonian Museum-wise, the Air and Space Museum being the big one. And let's see, how long is the National Mall? So It is approximately 2 miles. Depends on exactly where you start and where you end. But roughly speaking, from the far end, the Lincoln Memorial, all the way to the other end, the Capitol, that is about 2 miles. At a moderate pace, it would probably take about 40 minutes to make the walk. That said, officially, the National Mall goes from the Capitol to the Washington Monument, and then the rest of the way, that's West Potomac Park. But unofficially, we call the whole thing the National Mall, and it's a harmless thing. And let's see. Love that the chat amongst yourselves. 3 days in New York City, 3 days in DC. Probably not enough time for either, but better than a single day. There's enough to do in both places that you'll probably find 3 days is not enough for DC, 3 days is definitely not enough for New York. When I personally go to New York, I usually go for about 3 days at a time, and I wind up going every single year because always stuff that I didn't do, that I didn't have time to do, or that's new, right? There's always lots of new stuff going on, so just for perspective, that's about how long it takes to do stuff. All right, let me try to get across the street before I try to navigate the chat here. If YouTube gives me a ding for that ice cream truck playing It's a Small World, I'm going to be really annoyed. They sent me a copyright infringement for my 4th of July live stream for a song that was not on for more than probably 10 seconds. One of the performers in the parade came by, and that song was on for not more than 10 seconds, and they sent me an infringement for it. And Arlene, happy Sunday from Orange County, California. How's the weather over in Orange County? Typically when it's hot and humid over here in the east, it's not so bad over in the west. And Dan says, was just in Friendship Heights to see the Northwest No. 6 boundary stone and Fort Bayard Park. That's pretty cool. Yeah, so there are boundary stones all around the District of Columbia that they laid so that people knew where the border between DC and Maryland and Virginia were. You can still see some of those stones. Got to be a real urban explorer to seek those out, though. And Eddie Saunders asks, is that food truck row? Yeah, that's probably where most of them are, the ones that are around here anyway. Oh, so one thing to say. And Arlene, thank you for the super chat, my friend. Very much appreciated. Did you have a question? I don't see a comment on your super chat, so let me know if you do. And one thing I have to say about trucks is several of my tour guests have reported to me this year. They said, we were shocked by how expensive the ice cream was. And I said, what ice cream? Where did you go? And they said they went to a truck. So it appears that some of the ice cream vendors have taken a trick out of the old New York City hot dog vendor playbook, where they kind of look at everybody and they say, that's a tourist, that's a local, that's a tourist. And of course, over on the National Mall, it's mostly tourists. And when there's no prices posted, always ask before you order, how much is the specific thing that you want? Because just like the hot dog vendors in New York City used to do, it would be like normal price for the folks who work nearby and some outrageous inflated price for the folks that they pegged as the tourists. So be careful, always ask, order. I'd never actually heard about that happening here before this summer. I knew that was always a thing in New York City and probably lots of places around the world too. Places where there are a lot of international tourists, they tend to play games like that more than a place like DC, where we have a lot of mostly domestic domestic tourists. And let's see, Peter says, I live in the north of Sweden and know how to dress for the weather. I'm going to have a video coming up about what to wear in DC. I've been working on that one for a little while. It's tricky because what I wear is not necessarily the best for everybody. So I've been trying to get input from other people who are smarter than me on these topics. And Jay says, had enough of Small World. That's a staple at Disney World, is it not? It's been a while since I've been to Disney. And let's see, Alan Wynn. What are we talking about here? I think we're talking about where everybody's from, so not too familiar with these places myself. And yeah, so if you only have a short amount of time, you gotta really be picky about what you do, because you're not gonna do everything, definitely not gonna do everything, and you're really not even gonna do a lot of the big stuff either. What would be my top things to do in 3 days? So this is a tough one. So for the last 2 years, one of the things on my list of projects to do is to create a 3-day itinerary. So basically, if you're coming for 3 days, or you're coming for more than 3 days, but you really want to hone in on, you know, I got to make the most of my time. My idea was I'm going to make this itinerary and give it to everybody. And I've just given up on it because it's too hard. Too many things, like certain things are only open certain days. Like the Library of Congress, for example, has historically always been closed on Sundays. You know, museums have kind of been shifting their hours around lately. And it's also just like, sometimes you just got to squeeze things in when you can. So for example, I think everyone should take a tour of the monuments. I would love it to be a TripHacks DC tour, either a private tour with me or the Monumental Trivia Tour. However, that tour only runs once a week right now this summer. I would love to run it twice a week, but at the moment, there's only the capacity to run it once a week. And so it's just like, how do I design an itinerary that's like, yeah, you should take this tour, but only if you're here on the day that it's running, and you should go to the Library of Congress, but not if it's a Sunday, right? So it's just, it was way too hard to figure that out. You really have to build your own itinerary, is the conclusion I came to. As kind of painful as that is for me to say, because I know how useful it would be to just download a pre-made itinerary that's like, these are the 3-day, everything you need to do in 3 days. But there's just too many variables, just too many. So you're just gonna have to build your own. All right, I missed some comments here. So let's see. So Jay Stewart says they were right up to the Capitol building too, and Jay says UK tourists definitely charged more. You're talking about the food trucks. Yeah, there are often some food trucks outside the National Museum of American Indian. There's usually a few out there. Alan says the food talk's making me hungry. Definitely. And Michael Shade says, I find it annoying that most of these food trucks don't post their prices. It should be a law to post prices. I would never buy from a food truck on the mall, not trustworthy. I think that's the thing. It's like, that's your red flag right there. A place with no prices posted, that's a red flag. So I probably wouldn't go there myself. I don't want to paint with a broad brush here. I mean, not everybody behaves this way. And I hate to be negative about anybody, or say negative things about anybody's business, but I personally would see that as a huge red flag. And apparently this price price thing is all over the world. Yeah, it's always been a thing in lots of places. Jay says, picture has frozen Rob. Oh. Am I back? Jay, let me know if you can see me again. I warned at the beginning that the technology might not cooperate. Try refreshing if all else fails. And James asks, is there anyone there urban sketching? What is urban sketching? I'm not too familiar with that. Let me know and I'll try to answer that question. It is so sunny out here. I'm having a really hard time reading all of your comments on the screen. The glare is just so strong. I'm using a new app, a new device. Just working out all the kinks here. And Jay Stewart says the Natural History Museum is worth a visit. It's the most popular museum. It's huge. It's got some amazing artifacts in there. And Eddie wants to know if anyone has been to the cafe at the Department of Agriculture. I would offer to go over there today, Eddie, and check it out for you myself, but it's even in the before times, it was only open Monday through Friday, so going over there right now will not do us any good. I have not heard any word that it's reopened. That doesn't mean it hasn't, but I have not heard any word that it has. And Jay said we also enjoyed the art museum to get into the AC. Yes, so the National Gallery of Art up here on the left. Good option to get out of the sun in the heat on a day like today. And let's see, William, hi from Seattle, the other Washington. How's the weather today in Seattle? I always imagine Seattle as like an amazing summer destination. So while we are hot and humid all summer, I always just have this image in my head of Seattle being this like great summer place. And Eddie says my visit is mostly for work. Okay. Trying to cram in as much as I can on Friday afternoon, Saturday, and Sunday morning. That's not a lot of time. So good luck, Eddie. Did you say what dates you're coming? You might have already said and I missed it, but yeah, work trips are tricky because obviously the main reason you're coming is for work, and so there's often not a lot of time. You really got to cram everything in. Okay, Peter Hedberg says, I used to plan an itinerary for each travel day for my upcoming UK trip. I will take it much more as it comes. Feels just as good. I think a mix of both is a good way to go. If you plan it down to the minute, you leave yourself no flexibility. On the other hand, if you plan nothing, then you get here and you're like, oh, I needed tickets for the zoo. Oh, I needed tickets for this. And then you can't do a whole bunch of stuff because you had no preparation. So what I've been suggesting this year is to plan kind of one signature activity per day, one main thing per day, and then fill in as it goes. Some people, they plan everything. Some people, they like to wing it, but I think that's a good compromise for 2022 anyway. And Eddie Saunders, thank you for the super chat, my friend. Very much appreciated. Very generous of you, as always. Glad you were able to tune in. Glad I've been able to make it this far. It's been about 40 minutes. Still making my way down to the Capitol. And Alan Wynn. Oh, everybody's talking about me being frozen, and I'm thinking, man, I'm hot and sweaty out here. But you're talking about the picture. Yeah, technology on these live streams will always be my Achilles heel. Okay, James says drawing a picture of the building or people in a sketchbook. Oh yeah, people do that here. I've definitely seen that, especially for events. So, you can go to an event and you can take photos of the event document it. But I've also noticed people coming out with their books and just illustrating it. I think that's really cool. I think it's a really cool concept. Kind of an alternative to photography. If you have the skill, of course. I do not. I absolutely do not have that skill. But if you're into that, yeah, definitely people do that. And Dave Wheeler says, is there a day when the mall is more crowded than other days? Typically the weekends are more crowded than the weekdays, but there's a huge asterisk there. Huge asterisk, because it depends on a whole bunch of factors. It depends on the season. It depends on if it's field trip season. If you come in May during peak of the peak field trip season, it's going to be crowded every single day. August is kind of a break from the field trip season, so weekends tend to be more crowded. I mean, it depends on the weather. If the weather's rainy, it's going to be less crowded. If the weather's beautiful, like we had some absolutely beautiful, a rare treat for August a few weeks ago, and yeah, it was crowded on those days, but I don't blame anyone for coming out. You know, we rarely get nice days in August, so got to take advantage of that stuff. All right, now I want to show everyone, so this is the status of the Air and Space Museum. So when you hear, oh, it will be reopened in October, right, it will not be 100% done. We still have many more years of renovation up ahead. So just keep your expectations in check, because I hate for folks to have high expectations and then be let down. The reality is that this has always been a many-year renovation of the Air and Space Museum. And I do think it's lousy that they completely closed in the summer versus in the winter when there's fewer people around. But one thing I learned from COVID is that Smithsonian doesn't really seem to see themselves having a role in DC tourism, which may seem odd, but it just seems like they don't. And I say that because it just seemed like they took so long to reopen. You know, one of the reasons why 2021 was kind of a down year is because the Smithsonian museums didn't even begin reopening in 2021 until May. And they didn't fully reopen until the end of August. And like when that stuff's closed, people aren't going to come to DC. There's nothing I can do to change that, you know. Okay, William says it is sunny. I'm going to go over to the shade. I need some shade to read these comments. It's so sunny out here. William says it's sunny, but unusually cooler here in Seattle at 60. Man, I would love a 60 degrees right now. And Jay Stewart, thank you for the super chat, my friend. Very much appreciate it. And it was great to see you too. Yeah, so come on back. I know you got to go. So Jay was actually here during the, so go ahead and tell her. You got to go to a baseball game when the weather was amazing. You got to go to a football game when the weather was amazing. I'm sure the weather was much better than the quality of the play on the football field, but and William, thank you for the super chat, my friend. Everyone's very generous today. For not being able to. So Jay Stewart says it was a busy 2 weeks, lots of families around, which was nice to see. Yeah, family tourism has been fairly strong this year. So, you know, when you think about tourism in DC, most people think of tourism as family tourism. But for a lot of businesses, the big bucks are made on the business travel, the conferences, the mega conventions, the auto show, that kind of stuff. And that stuff has been much slower to return. I did see that the convention center said they just had one of their biggest events. I believe it was one of the anime anime conventions. I can't recall the name of it. If anyone knows, go ahead and leave that in the chat. And all right, let me make it across the street and then we'll catch back up on the chat. Okay, Jay says it's starting to get a little bit toasty. And yeah, Eddie Saunders says his first ever trip to DC was in August and has not returned in August. Sometimes when you come, you know, that's the tricky thing about visiting any destination. Imagine you go to a place where it almost never rains, and then just by dumb luck, you're there on a super rainy week. You know, you'll think negatively of that place forever. So Eddie comes in August, and it's hot and humid and miserable. Meanwhile, Jay comes in August, gets super lucky. It's like the nicest August weather we've ever had. So, two people coming at the same time, totally different experiences. And let's see, Dave Wheeler. Ooh, yeah. So, if I make it to the if I make it all the way to the Capitol, that will be a win. I don't think I will ever do one of these live streams and not struggle with the technology. So I'm calling it now. If I don't make it all the way, and I'm so close too, I'm so close, but if I don't make it, if it cuts out, if the stream fails, well, then that's just how it is. But we've already made it 47 minutes, which is pretty decent. And Jay says, my son refused to go to the Nats game. What? Unfortunately, so I didn't get there. Oh man, that is such a bummer. That was such a nice day too. And Peter says that is a nice screenshot image of the Capitol. Yeah, it is. I've got quite a few. So we've had a decent amount of rain this year. So someone was recently asking me like, hey, how's the grass so green? Because in their part of the country, they've been in a drought and everything's brown. Now there are actually sprinklers here on these parts of the lawn, but for the most part, we've had a decent amount of rain this year, so I think a lot of the grass is staying green. In a different summer, it would have been brown by now. And Michael Shade wants me to turn back and look at those beautiful bike lanes. Yeah, I'm too sweaty. I'm not going to turn back now, but those, I think you're talking about 4th Street. Those are relatively new bike lanes. I use them pretty often when I'm riding around Capitol Bike Share on the National Mall. And Eddie Saunders says, even with the weather, no matter how hot it was, I was addicted. So much to do. Okay, so I guess I'll get anyone who's tuned in now, they get a little sneak preview here. So I will say, let me get it around here. Okay, so I recently read an article about someone who, in 2022, their goal for the year was to go to every museum in DC. And that might sound easy, but they have a list of over 80 museums. 80! And they're almost done. So I asked if I could interview this person for the TripHacks DC podcast, and they agreed. So I haven't recorded it yet. So I can't say when that episode will be available, but I've had some really great guests on the TripHacks DC podcast, and this one I'm definitely looking forward to, because to go to over 80 museums, that is impressive. That is impressive. So, to the point that when people say, how do I do everything, right? If you went to one museum per day, and you were going to 80 of them, that would take you nearly 3 months. And Alan Wynn says, making it to the Capitol is the equivalent to a touchdown. I agree. We'll all celebrate if I make it. I'm going to try to make it to the other side. That's going to be the goal. We're going to try to make it all the way to the, let's say we'll try to make it to the Library of Congress, my favorite building. If we can make it to the Library of Congress, then we will all stop and celebrate. All right, Sparky coming to DC in November for the midterms, the election. I don't know why you would want to come to DC for that, but have fun. Election day in DC is really not that special. And Eddie Saunders says the Capitol seems like it's always under construction. Yeah, sure does. Hey, Mark Finley, good to see you, my friend. Just got home from church. Yeah, you've been having some good content lately, Mark. I kind of wish you had been making those videos back when you came to DC, so I could have gotten a cameo in one of your videos. But check out the Mark Finley YouTube channel. What I like about it is that the videos are all short to the point. They're the Gettysburg Address of videos. They tell me exactly what I need to know. And you know, it feels like YouTube videos are just always, the average length is always getting longer. And this is kind of true for TripHacks DC too. So for a long time, most TripHacks DC videos were 5 to 6 minutes long. Now they're probably like 8 to 9 minutes long on average. But man, a lot of videos, it just feels like they've crept up from 10 minutes to 15 minutes to 20 minutes to 25 minutes. And at that point, it's a whole TV show episode. A TV show episode with commercials skipped is like 21 minutes. So I'm curious, let me know. Have you noticed this too? Have you noticed that videos are getting really, really long? And how do you feel about that? I'm not going to be able to read any more of these comments until I get back in the shade because it's so sunny and the glare is I need some sort of glare reduction cover for this phone. I just keep spending money on this live streaming setup trying to get it to work. Okay, I think the sun went behind some clouds, so. And question, what's the deal with tipping in America? Well, that's a can of worms. That's not just a DC question. But Jay Stewart says we tipped between 15 and 20% after the meal. Yeah, so definitely if you're coming from another country, get familiar with that. And Eddie says Nightbot should really post the TripHacks DC site with that. All right, excellent suggestion. I wonder if there's a reason why I didn't set it up that way. Because that's a pretty obvious thing I screwed up, right? Michael Shade says I am now walking above I-395. Yep, it goes in a tunnel underneath the National Mall. There was also in 2009, you can Google the Purple Tunnel of Doom. Or if you, without Googling, if you know what the Purple Tunnel of Doom is, let me know. I'm always curious how many people know about little fun factoids like that. And Mr. Gill says, I'm a brave man in this heat. Greetings from Pentagon City. Well, I already came out and gave a 3-hour tour. We went from 9 to noon. So at that point, hey, what's another hour? What's another hour in the heat? And let's see. Oh, wow, Mark Finley says we'll be back in DC. Do you know when? Or is that just a vague plan? Oh yes, Escaping the Empty Nest is the name of Mark's YouTube channel. Yeah. Really useful short videos. Now I have to admit, I'm not really into the cruising stuff. I know there's some cruising videos you have. I'm not a cruiser. I'm a land guy. So I usually skip those, but everything else, the Europe stuff, that's really good. Lots of good tips. And I appreciate that it's all like, we tried this and either it worked great or it didn't work. There's also a lot of stuff on YouTube these days that's sponsored in some way. It's really hard to know what you can trust. It's getting kind of bad. All right, Jay Stewart bought a pocket guide to the Constitution for some bedtime reading. Yeah, well, hey, I appreciate that. You're from another country, you don't know much about our Constitution. I don't know much about your, well, even if it is called a Constitution, but it's always great when you visit a place to kind of learn a little bit about where you've been. And Eddie Saunders never knew that about I-395. So Michael Shade with the knowledge. Now, I am a baseball fan. I am not a football fan. I like all the sports, really, except for the NFL. The Commander is just not a good, it's not a good product, sadly. And yes, City Mapper. I use both Google Maps and City Mapper. They both have pros and cons. Google Maps is better than it used to be for some things. It used to be that City Mapper was really good because Google Maps was limited, but Google Maps is pretty good now too. And let's see here, Rebecca from Manhattan. I love how you specified Manhattan, NYC. I know there are multiple Manhattans in the country, but one of my favorite places to go. There's always something to do in New York City and Manhattan. All right, Mark might be back in October. Send me an email, Mark, when you have your dates finalized so we can do something. We can make some kind of video together. What time zone is DC? It is Eastern Time. And Michael Shade says I don't even know how to pronounce this, crepe myrtles are in full bloom. I appreciate that you know about that. Two things I don't know anything about: plants and animals. I can point out the cherry trees, but most of these trees I can't. However, that said, over here on the Capitol grounds, many of the trees, many of the plants, they have a marker. So you can look at this and you can see the name of the species, you can see where it came from, you can see the scientific name. So if you're a botany enthusiast, lots of good stuff over here. All right, getting so close to the destination. I will say, to Mark Finley's point, he's maybe coming in October. October is my personal favorite month of the year. If you ask people who live here their favorite month of the year, my hunch is you'll probably get a combination of September, October, April, and maybe May, just because that's the most temperate weather months. I like October because weather's usually pretty cool. Most family tourism has kind of winded down. 8th grade trips are back in October though, for whatever that's worth. And Neil says, greetings from Northeast Kansas. Glad you like the videos. Thanks for tuning in, Neil. And Neil also loves October. Yes, Dave Wheeler says, it looks like I earned myself an ice cream by making it all the way. I will use the super chats to buy myself an ice cream, not from a place that does not have their prices listed. Let's all take that away. If I was going to get ice cream, I would probably go to Ice Cream Jubilee, my preferred ice cream spot. But there are lots of good ice cream places in DC. And Neil says, yeah, October still has a decent amount of daylight. So right now, I believe a few days ago, sunset is now around 8 o'clock. So October depends, you know, it's different if you come October 1st versus October 31st. But October is also the month when, because my private tour of the monuments, it starts at 5 o'clock. In the summer, it's not dark until after the tour is over, just because it gets dark super late. In the winter, in December, it's completely dark the entire time. And October is kind of like the perfect mix. It's completely light at the beginning, and then it gets a little dark at the end. So if that's kind of what you're looking for, October is definitely the time. All right, a little out of breath, trying hard not to breathe really loud and annoyingly into the microphone here, but Capitol Hill is a hill, and I just went up the hill. And let's see, Neil says went around October 20th of 2019, and it was quiet. Yeah, end of October is usually when it starts getting quiet. Beginning of October, a lot of school districts have a fall break, and it's typically the first or second week of October. And in the past, I have been caught very off guard by this. I assume October is going to be relatively quiet, and then like all my tours book up way early for the first or second week of October. And it's because of fall break. So always book early. It's best to book as early as you can for stuff you definitely know you want to do. And Jay Stewart says we have a school holiday in October. So just got to convince the family to go next year. Or you could come on your own. Or you could go to North Carolina and visit Eddie first. All right, let's see. Yeah, so glad you like the videos. I do have the private tour schedule now open through the end of October. I will probably be opening up through the end of November in a couple weeks. So keep an eye out for the announcement. Or if you're coming in November and you really want first dibs, send me an email through the website, tripxdc.com, with your dates, and I will add you to the interest list. And then as soon as I press the button to make the November tour calendar open, you'll get first dibs. And Michael Shade says, tonight's sunset will be at 7:45? Really? That early? This is the time of year when we lose like 2 to 3 minutes of daylight per day. So I guess I'm not that surprised, but I'm both surprised and not surprised. And Jay Stewart says, Claire is watching too. Hello, Claire. I am, well, I know you weren't really that looking forward to going to the baseball game, Claire, but I'm bummed for all of you that you didn't make it to the baseball game. It was such a nice day. I mean, oh. I feel like when you have a really nice day in August in DC, you got to take advantage. Now, the Library of Congress is closed on Sundays. I just had to tell someone who was very disappointed. They wanted to come here to the Library of Congress today, and I said, it's closed on Sundays, so you can't come. And that's always been the case. That is not a COVID thing. Library of Congress has always been a 6-day per week operation. And I still have footage of this Neptune fountain that I was going to turn it into a TikTok. This is one of the most not safe for work statues in DC here. And I've been meaning to turn this into a TikTok, but that's always the lowest priority for me of all the things I've got to do. Michael Shade says it's one of his favorite things in DC. Yeah, me too. The entire Library of Congress Jefferson building is one of my favorites. Everything about it is awesome. And I did come to the open house, the main reading room open house. That they had on Memorial Day. So I made a short video about that, posted that on TikTok. I don't know if I posted that on YouTube, but it was fun. TikTok is rough though. People who leave comments on TikTok, it's a tough audience. All right, Jay said, Claire had to endure through the football. Yeah, you dragged her to a Washington Commanders game. That's rough. Hopefully you made it up to her some other way. All right. Oh man, Alan Wynn, the Nightbot got ya. I thought I disabled that. The Nightbot was being a real jerk during the cherry blossom parade, so I tried to disable that, but apparently not. Sorry about that. And yes, Alan Wynn says touchdown. So this is it. Look at this view. I mean, this is one of the best views. Can't beat that. All right, so here we are. I made it, the Library of Congress. I walked the entire length of the National Mall, all the way from Lincoln to the Capitol. A little over 2 miles, took 1 hour and 5 minutes. So if you want to do this yourself, well, first of all, I highly recommend not trying to do it on a super hot, humid summer day. But if that's all you got, then it's all you got. But you'll have now a sense of how long it takes. If you were going really fast, if you're a speed walker, you could probably do it in 40, 45 minutes. Obviously, I was taking my good old time, struggling to read the comments with the glare on the screen. But this is it. So it's definitely doable if you want to do it. And with that, I will start to say goodbye. So, you know, if you tuned in, if you're here live with me, go ahead and say goodbye in the chat. Not sure when the next live stream will be. I actually made it the entire way without the technology failing, so that gives me some confidence. And I will try to do another one of these in September. Don't know the dates yet, but make sure you're following TripHacksDC on all the social medias, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, and on YouTube. I try to post announcements on the YouTube community screen. However, my experience, I mostly use YouTube on a computer. My experience is that those messages really only pop up if you're using YouTube on a phone. So if you mostly use it on a computer, definitely follow on the other social medias too, so you don't miss any of these. Eddie Saunders with a big smiley face says great view. Thanks for tuning in, Eddie. Thanks for the super chat, and let me know if you, I think you told me your dates for September. I'll go back and see what I've got going on during those dates, but you're only here for a short time. And Michael Shade says, do I know if the Senate garage fountain still lights up at night? I do not. I have not been over there at night in a long time. That's not the main Capitol reflecting pool. It's a second one on the north side of the building in between Union Station and the Capitol, and it's definitely one that almost nobody knows about. So good hidden gem if you want to find that. James wants to know when the humidity breaks in DC. Usually in September. However, the exact timing is hard to pin down. So you could come in mid-December and it could be super humid. You could come in the beginning of September and it could be not humid. But really, you got to wait till October to get the really good stuff. And let's see. Jay Stewart says, in our 7 days in DC, we walked 45 miles. Such a great city. I'd encourage everyone to visit and book a tour. Yeah, that's great. 45 miles, that's pretty good. So I typically, I don't know, let me see. I do have a Fitbit thing that I have on. Let's see how many miles I did today. Today I have done 7.6 miles so far. So that includes my tour this morning. From 9 to noon, plus this live stream. So 7.6, and I haven't even walked my dogs yet, so I'll definitely crack 8. I don't know if I'll do more than that, because I'm probably just going to want to turn my shower on as cold as it goes and then collapse after I get home. Oh, and get my ice cream. I got to get my ice cream. So James, goodbye. Thanks for tuning in. Alan Wynn, thanks for tuning in. Evan Cortez, good to see you. Thanks for making me think about that fountain, or that pool every time I walk past that thing. And Neil, good to see you. And Rebecca says, I'm a very intelligent kid. Curious to know how old you think I am if you call me a kid, but I'll take it. I'll take the compliment. And Neil says, 45 miles. Yeah, that's pretty good, Jay. Pretty good. Most people, now I'm curious, Jay, most people set their step records when they go to Disney rather than DC. So since you went to both, I'm curious to know, on average, did you do more miles in Disney or in DC? And let's see, Mr. Gills says, went to the Library of Congress the other day. They had a DJ and were selling beer and wine? What was the name of that event? I did not get wind of that. Not to say that I would have gone, but super interesting. Jay Stewart, of course. Have a good trip home. Oh, or are you already home? this has helped the bad mood at having to return home. No, so you still got to catch your final flight back home. So, and Neil, thank you for the super chat, my friend. Very much appreciated. David, thank you for joining. And Gary Sorensen. Gary Sorensen always, says hello and goodbye, but I know you're always here. And so thanks for tuning in, Gary. And Tamila, first live stream, excellent. Well, there will be more. And if you really like it, there's plenty in the archive, so you can go back and watch more. All right, Dave Wheeler, thanks for tuning in. Jay Stewart, Eddie, everybody, thanks for tuning in. And I will see you next time. And as I say at the end of all of these, enjoy your trip.